Something is always happening somewhere. This is a new special about leaders, their promises, voters and their demands. A show that tells you all about the rules of the race, cutting through the rhetoric to bring you the reality, cutting through the populism to bring out the policy at play. The show that keeps you updated on the twists and turns, the hits and the misses. Watch Race to Power on WION World is One.
Welcome to the first episode of Wild of Africa 2024. I'm Erik Njoka. This year, some countries seem to have a resolution of capturing the psyche of Africans by stamping their footprint on the continent following the ceremonious exit of one of the colonizers, France. Thank you for joining us. The show starts right now. Russia is the nation that I'm talking about. The Vladimir Putin administration is rekindling their relationship with some of the coup-hit nations in the Sahel and West Africa after France said that some of its last troops have left Niger. The Kremlin reopened its embassy in Burkina Faso nearly 32 years after the West African nation fell out with former colonial ruler France. Moscow closed its embassy in 1992. Here's a report from Ouagadougou.
A ceremony here and goodbyes on the other end. It was an end of an era for the French troops in Niamey, Niger, who were on their way out of the coup-hit Sahel nation. It was the third time in less than 18 months that French troops were sent packing from a Sahel nation after fellow former colonies Mali and Burkina Faso following military takeovers. France announced it would pull out its roughly 1,500 soldiers and pilots from Niger after the former French colony's new ruling generals demanded they depart following a coup on July 26th. On the streets of Niamey, Nigerians celebrated the exit of French troops. The ceremonial pullout event was attended by the Prime Ministers of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. And as the departure of France culminated in Niger, Burkina Faso was shaking hands with a new ally, Russia. Kremlin reopened its embassy in Burkina Faso after it was shut over 30 years ago, officials have said. Burkina Faso was a close ally of former colonial power France, but has pivoted towards Russia after the military seized power in a coup in 2022. The junta has expelled French diplomats and has shut France's military base in the country. At the same time, it is strengthening military and diplomatic ties with Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced plans to reopen the embassy at the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg in July. The embassy was closed in 1992 when Moscow reduced its involvement in Africa after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Alexei Saltykov, Russian ambassador to Ivory Coast, is the new interim ambassador to Burkina Faso.
I remain convinced that the proximity from every point of view between the two states generated by this reopening will make it possible to offer more opportunities to the various economic and political players in the two states. It will be a catalyst for developing the economic potential of both countries and for forging fruitful partnerships.
Russia is ready to provide possible assistance to Burkina Faso and to build equal and mutually beneficial relations over the long term.
Overall, Russia's military presence in Africa focused on strengthening both the official and unofficial channels of defense security cooperation with different African states. It has proved to be a cost-effective way for Kremlin to gain considerable political and economic leverage in the continent that even the 2022 war in Ukraine has been unable to undermine. In 2023, Russia-Africa Summit participants agreed to establish a new permanent Russian-African security mechanism aimed at combating terrorism and extremism in the continent. However, some negative trends were also observed. For example, Algeria and Egypt, that have long been listed among Russia's top 5 arms purchasers globally, slowly started to reduce defense ties with the Kremlin in 2022. Yet, considering the high reliance of both countries on Russian origin arms, they will most likely maintain defense cooperation with Moscow in the near term. Despite the Russian Empire not being a prominent player in the 19th century scramble for Africa, the sweeping colonization of the continent by European powers forced it to pursue various goals there. This included starting with seeking trade access to Indian Ocean ports and spreading the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church. That involvement grew during the Cold War as the Soviet Union sought to pull newly independent African countries into its orbit. Soviet foreign policy focused on building relationships with sympathetic socialist or non-aligned countries across Africa, as well as supporting local communist political parties and military insurgencies. The latter included sending weapons, advisors, and other aid to allies in the civil war-ridden Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Moscow also formed a close relationship with South Africa's anti-apartheid African National Congress, the country's ruling party since 1994, a relationship that continues till today. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Top United Nations human rights official has voiced deep alarm over the series of attacks on communities in central Nigeria, which have left at least 160 people dead and many more injured. President Bola Tinubu has ordered a probe into attacks that occurred in the Plateau State. Our correspondent Louisa Olaniyi sent this report.
It has been a week of Christmas horror with mass killings in north-central Nigeria. Gunmen struck remote villages in violence that had blamed on the farmer-herder crisis in the West African nation. The assailants targeted 17 communities in senseless and unprovoked attacks, burning down most houses in the area. Local residents said it took over 12 hours before security agencies responded to their call for help. It is a claim that echoes past concerns about the slow interventions in Nigeria's deadly security crisis. Women and children are the biggest casualties in the violence that has claimed 160 people so far, with several others still missing.
The number of displaced persons is into thousands because, like I said, the communities affected are about 21. Even communities are not affected for fear. Some have vacated their residence. They are now taking refuge here in Bokkos.
It has been the bloodiest violence since 2018, when more than 200 people were killed in Nigeria's central region, where clashes between herders and farmers are common. No group took responsibility for the attacks, though blame fell on the herders from the Fulani tribe. The tribesmen have been accused of carrying out such mass killings across the northwest and central regions in decades-long conflict over land and water. It has further worsened the sectarian divisions between Christians and Muslims in Africa's most populous nation. The Nigerian army said that it has begun clearance operations with the help of other security agencies. Although arrests are rare in such cases, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu instructed security agencies to scour every stretch of the zone and apprehend the culprits, according to a statement from his office. Tinubu was elected this year after promising to tackle security challenges his predecessor had failed to address.
The devil's work that happened on the eve of Christmas cannot be explained because it is unprovoked. Nobody here has touched anybody. Nobody here has carried anybody's cow yet. And it so happened that up till 4 a.m., there were 36 different calls.
Nigeria's vice president visited a camp for displaced people in the northern Plateau state and spoke to the survivors.
When one community bleeds, the entire nation feels the pain. The pain we feel now transcends ethnicity or religion, geography or politics. The grief that binds us is a testament to our shared humanity, not differences.
Amnesty Nigeria says Tinubu's government and others have failed to take tangible actions to protect lives and ensure justice for victims in the conflict-hit northern region.
Now, with thousands of citizens reportedly butchered or hacked to death, either for belonging to a religious sect or ethnic group and the like since 2009 to date in Nigeria, religious leaders have reiterated the need to reset Nigeria's security architecture to prevent further killings by terrorists and armed groups in the country in the new year. The latest Christmas Eve attack in Plateau State, North Nigeria, led to the cancellation of the usual New Year celebrations across the local government areas in the state by the Jos Joint Traditional Council. This move is believed to be one of the greatest moves to press home their displeasure of the continuous killings. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION, World is One.
Ugandan Paralympian Hasna Kukundakwe, at the tender age of 16, has become a beacon of hope, shattering stereotypes and inspiring many, especially those living with disabilities. Born without her right forearm and an impairment to her left hand, Kukundakwe's journey in the aquatic world began when she was barely 3. Today, she stands as the youngest Paralympian at the Tokyo Games, a title she achieved at 14. Here's her story of how she is smashing stereotypes of people living with disabilities.
From a distance, Husna Kukundakwe is getting ready for her normal routine. Husna is a swimmer born without her right forearm and an impaired left hand. At just 14, she was the youngest Paralympian at the Tokyo Games. Kukundakwe was 3 years old when she began paddling in a pool in her local kindergarten. The Ugandan swimmer faces an equally tough test at the upcoming 2024 Paris Games in August. But the 16-year-old said she's used to smashing stereotypes, starting with her own mum.
My first time swim was in kindergarten. I was 3 years old. It was at Lina Daycare Nursery School. They have a swimming pool there, so I would just go there, play around, just beat around in the water, and it felt nice, felt calming. I just loved being in the water. Of course, in the beginning, my mom wasn't supportive about it because she was worried that I would not be able to swim. But of course, I kept being stubborn and kept going back, even though she told me not to. So eventually, she had to give in.
Her mother, however, was not so enthusiastic. Husna soon won her first contest, aged 9, racing past able-bodied swimmers. Her mother, Hashima Patience Bata Muriza, who is now her manager, allowed her to stop using flotation vests, paving the way for Kukundakwe's journey to the Olympics. The teenager never imagined that she would compete on a global stage, despite spending hours in the water every week. She secured a certificate allowing her to take part in international sporting events, later attending a swimming camp in South Korea and eventually competing in the World Para-Swimming World Series 2019 in Singapore. Then came the icing on the cake, qualifying for the Tokyo Games. But the COVID-19 pandemic threw her preparation into disarray as Ugandan authorities ordered swimming pools and gyms to close.
At those championships, it was nerve-wracking, of course. It was my first time competing against para-swimming legends, the ones I watched on YouTube, and also meeting my role model in face-to-face was definitely an amazing experience. It was so much fun.
It's an uphill battle in Uganda, where disabled children are sometimes seen as a burden and abandoned by their families. According to Uganda's state-run Equal Opportunities Commission, people with disabilities face stigma and discrimination and are often denied access to public services like health and education.
My main goal going there was to inspire people with or without disabilities, especially children, to reach out for their dreams as soon as they can, because I managed to get there at the age of 14. Imagine reaching that highest athlete level at the age of 14. It was such a huge achievement, and I would want other children to reach out for their dreams as soon as they can.
Bureau Report, WION World is One.
A fencing club in Nairobi is creating uplifting opportunities for local youths. Even though fencing is not a popular sport in Kenya, the club is pushing to make people aware of it and garner their support. Here's a report from Nairobi.
It's a busy Friday morning in one of Nairobi's Eastland estates, where a sword-wielding group from the Savora Matani Fencing Club is bringing the streets of Huruma to a standstill. Dawn in white, the fencers take turns trying to poke or score hits or touches on each other, competing as residents look on. Aged between 15 to 18 years, the group of 2 girls and 6 boys have been learning and practicing fencing since 2021, when they were given space for free. The sport is not widespread in Kenya, which is why the group wants to make people aware of it and garner their support.
This sport is very unique. Many people don't know this sport. Unlike football, many people know it.
Alan took up the sport to keep her away from the streets. Their coach, Isaac Maburu, who is also a coach for the Kenyan national fencing side, started the initiative after learning the sport abroad. His aim is to keep youth off the streets and away from crime that almost ended his life.
I never wanted to see any youth in the life that I lived. You understand? That's why you see that we are going so hard in pulling in more youths, just trying to bring them in and into this safe space, whereby we call it, because they get mentored.
Fencing is a combat sport that involves fighting with a light, thin sword. The sport is taking over the local scene in various estates in Nairobi. Alexander Ndolo is the only face of the sport. The German-born Kenyan fencer is ranked among the top 10 in the world. But she blames the Kenya Fencing Federation for failing to support her in a quest to represent the country at the Paris Olympic Games. Ndolo won silver for Germany at the World Championships in 2022 before switching to compete for Kenya, the country of her father. For the young fencers, the ambition is clear. They want to become champion fencers.
It has helped me very much because if you look around, there are some my age mate girls that are pregnant. Yeah, so if you join in something that is keeping you busy, it will help you to not get distracted with some drug abuse and so, yeah.
The sport is uplifting lives in informal settlements in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, where reformed criminals are making fencing their weapon of change as coaches. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, each year, over 4 days, around December or January, in the Tunisian city of Douz, thousands of people gather to observe a century-old ritual with a display of public marriages, unusual dances, and other celebrations of the unique Bedouin traditions. Here's a look at the 55th edition of International Festival of the Sahara.
The Tunisian Sahara Desert was abuzz as the prestigious International Sahara Festival opened in Douz. The festival celebrates the rich history of the Berber culture and the Razig tribe that prospered in the Tunisian Sahara for decades.
I came especially for the festival because I really wanted my children to get to know it. I'm originally from Douz, and it's true that I've lived in France all my life. But basically, I'm from Douz. And in fact, I've always wanted to see the festival, but I've never had the chance. And this was my chance.
Founded in 1910, it is the most famous festival celebrating the nomad and Saharian culture at an international level since 1967. Its main theme is the celebration of the heritage of the Arab Berber tribe of Razigs. Its fame transcends borders and friendly countries take part in the shows. The city of Duz, which usually consists of 12,000 souls and 25 times more palm trees, making it the largest palm grove in Tunisia, is full of life and visitors when the time of the festival comes.
This is my first time at the Daos Festival. Today we have come to discover the heritage of southern Tunisia.
We've come today to attend the Douz Festival. It's the 55th festival. There are lots of people, all the festivities and folklore of southern Tunisia. We've come from Paris. We live in Tozeur. We came especially for the day.
Each year over 4 days around December or January in the Tunisian city of Douz, thousands of people gather to observe a century-old ritual with a display of public marriages, unusual dances and other celebrations of the unique Bedouin traditions. The main events take place in an amphitheatre set up in Hennik Square, which is surrounded by Bedouin tents. Festival goers are treated to camel racing and wrestling, traditional Bedouin ceremonies and slowy or dog hunts. Exhibitions, book and date fairs and documentary screenings complete the program. Evenings are organized around song and dance. The Douz Festival allows visitors to discover the gateway to the Great Sahara. Traditionally, the town was an important stop for camel trains transiting from the Sahara to the north of the country. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Kenya's most lauded sculptor, Elkanah Ongesa, has seen his giant stone sculptures displayed all over the world, but believes that African art still has not won the recognition it deserves, either overseas or at home. Here's a report from Kisii County, Kenya.
African art is very important, but it has not been supported well enough to give a chance to be enjoyed by many people in the world. African art at the moment is dependent on what support some artists and their art get from other countries. To me, art is a language of expression. To me, art is a means of conveying some feelings I have in my mind. And because of that, art makes it easier for me to say certain things that I wouldn't have said otherwise.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of Wild of Africa. Get in touch with us on all our social media platforms and share your thoughts and feedback about the show there. My name is Erik Njoka. Keep watching WION World is One. And until next time, it's goodbye from me.
India's